involved in Ghana's politics. In fact, in 1996, he made a bid to run for the country's presidency. Since then, he's been involved in a lot of business and consultancy work. Ladies and gentlemen, join me welcome Mr. Kwame Pianim. Thank you very much, sir, for your time, and good to have you on the program.
My pleasure.
So what have you been up to?
I'm trying to retire, probably unsuccessfully. I'm now doing a fish farm on the Volta Lake at Kudikope in the Sojaman district, and chairing eTransact, the electronic payment platform.
Once upon a time, I know you served on a number of boards. You served on the board of UBA and a number of other companies. Are you still serving on some boards?
No, Tigo, Airtel, I give it up, Bayport Financial Services. I'm gradually giving up all my board functions so that I can retire and have time for myself.
Were you particularly impressed about the kind of work that you brought to bear on these companies?
I think so. I think that when I'm doing work, especially if you are the chairman of a board of a bank, you have a serious responsibility. You make sure that all the committees work properly, the risk committee, the governance committee, and you make sure that you are not a member of any of the subcommittees, so that when they bring things to the board, every director is then free, in spite of having participated at the committee level, to participate at the board level where everybody brings their views so that the board can take a considered opinion of the matter. So it is serious, and you make sure that all the regulatory, mandatory regulatory filings are adhered to, anti-money laundering, all that. It's the responsibility of the chairman of the board to make sure that the directors comply, that nothing untoward happens without the board knowing. And your job is to make sure that shareholders' funds are safe and secure.
Ensuring good corporate governance.
Absolutely. That is your responsibility. And if you don't know the business, you don't accept to serve on the board because you have fiduciary responsibilities. You can be sued by shareholders if the board of directors do not comport themselves as they should be. No conflict of interest. You cannot be on the board and be supplying goods to the company. If you have any interest in anything that is coming, you declare it openly and not participate in a board decision.
Interesting. And so you served creditably and ensured that all these boxes were ticked.
Yeah, I think so. And the companies I served on as board chair members, they are doing well, they are thriving. So I credit myself with that. There are two things I've done in Ghana that I'm very proud of. I was responsible under J.H. Mensah for establishing SNIT. The name SS&IT I coined in my kitchen at Labone. The Teachers Fund is now almost about $600 million. I set it up from my consultancy, New World. That's where we set up the Teachers Fund. So I'm proud of some of the things I've done in Ghana.
And so did it come to you as surprise or shocking when you heard the central bank having to close down a number of commercial banks for various infractions?
I think that the Bank of Ghana banking supervision department was complicit. There was no way the banks could have done the things they were doing without Bank of Ghana being complicit. And what surprises me is that there were internationally affiliated auditing companies that were auditing these banks and saying they were going concerns. What happened to them? Nothing has happened to them.
Well, at least we know some of them were under investigations.
They should all be held accountable and responsible. And I think that, we should not allow people who take about $600 million of taxpayers' monies from banks which we've rescued to go scot-free. If a young man were to steal a goat, in 3 days, 1 week, they'll be in cells. So the law should be no respecter of persons. And we should make sure that all the people who were involved were dealt with.
Have you been impressed about the management of the whole banking sector crisis? The management of the crisis itself? Does that excite you?
I think that Bank of Ghana, the governor and his people, inherited a very bad situation. They've done pretty well. But I think that they should have been a little bit more bolder. For example, people collected their pensions. They put them on fixed deposits with the bad banks. Why? The bad banks were paying about 32%, 30% on fixed deposits. The good banks, EcoBank, Barclays, were paying 18%. So they put their monies there. We closed them down. And now we are saying those with fixed deposit, we are going to pay them 20,000, 10,000. Doesn't make sense to me. Bank of Ghana should have let all these people be given bank accounts at the new bank they've opened and put their monies there on deposit, the full amount, not part of it. Because by not doing that, they've squeezed credit in the economy. They've made people suspicious of putting their monies in the banks. It's going to take maybe a decade for confidence to be restored in the banks. When we started in the 60s, early 70s, to get people to put their monies in the banks, it took a long time for people to have confidence to go and put their monies in the bank, as opposed to putting their monies under their beds. Okay? So the banking system in a country is important. It's the basis of the economy. They are responsible for giving credit. The market woman should be willing and ready to go and put their monies in the bank. Because when you and I put 100 cedis in the bank then magically can generate a credit for 1,000 cedis. That's what the banking system does. So we should make sure that the banking system is solid. And then we attract investors. We attract our own people to put monies in the banks. Then the banks will go around and give people who have good ideas but no money to implement the ideas and give employment to the people.
Right. So you think it's going to take us a while longer for the entire banking system to recover from this whole crisis?
Yes. And it means making sure. I thought when 950 million Ghana cedis were said to be used to clean up the loans and savings and so forth, that we're going to use the bulk of it to pay people who had deposits in the banks their full money. Not to say, come and take 10,000, 20,000, about 1.3 million on deposit with one of the banks that was closed. What would I do with 20,000 Ghana cedis or 10,000 Ghana cedis? And in Europe, they even have something called quantitative easing. They just pump money into the economy. What is wrong with Bank of Ghana? Print the money if you don't have it. Because people are not going to take the money out. It's on deposit in the banks. So I encourage Bank of Ghana, be bold enough, before Christmas, let's pay all these people their monies. Fixed deposits, let's put them, open accounts in the consolidated bank, wherever the banks are, so that we give their full deposits for them.
That brings me to my next topic. You just talked about quantitative easing that is practiced in other advanced economies. Just recently, the central bank released some new cedi notes, high denominations of 200 and 100 cedis. Many people, or let's say some people I've listened to, have criticized this move. They say that it has a tendency of causing inflation. What do you make of it?
Look, in Ghana, there are certain institutions that are independent. We get competent people to run them. Let's allow them to run them. About 40 years ago, the highest unit was 50 cedis. The cedi was equivalent to $1. Now, the highest note in Ghana is 50 cedis. What is 50 cedis in Ghana now? $10. You know, we call money is used as a transaction unit you use for transactions. If I'm going to a restaurant to go and eat, it's going to cost me 200 cedis. If I have only 2 cedi notes or 100 cedi notes, I need a handbag like a lady. It's my back pocket. My money is in my back pocket. So if you take 200 cedi notes now, what is it? It's $40. It's less than the $50 note 40 years ago. So we are retrogressing. The currency also serves as a store of value. I remember in the 1970s when they came and said that 50 cedi notes, anybody who has it, they were going to deal with him. And people were dumping their 50 cedi notes. I didn't have any 50 cedi notes. We were told you can go and change them at the bank. My maid had 50 cedi notes. She came to me, boss, can you help me to change it? I said, what do you do? It's a savings. So when she gets money, she gets 150 cedi note, put it under her bed, get another. So for her, it's a store of value. So the 200 cedi note is equivalent to $40 now. That is not good enough. If we thought $50 notes was to be the highest denomination. So the governor of the central bank, his job is to make sure that we have adequate resources for transactional activities.
But you and I know that in other advanced countries, one of the ways of introducing money into the economy is through the issuance of domestic bonds, and then they buy it back. Probably that could have been a way.
But I mean, the governor, when he issuing these currencies, it's not like quantitative easing.
Right.
He's not just going to the street and giving the money to people to go and spend. Now, when you have your 1,500 cedis and they are bringing in new notes, the bank take their old notes. Bank of Ghana would now give them not 50, but 100, 200, and the bank who want it will make a request for it. It's not they are not introducing to cause inflation. What they are doing is that the money is in your pocket. You can go to the bank, or when you go to the bank to cash a check, instead of you saying I want 5 cedi notes or 1 cedi notes, when you have 150 cedi, they don't have it.
Will this check the continuous weakening of the local currency?
No, it has nothing to do with it. It's just saying that the money that you have now, if you want to go to a funeral in Kumasi, and you know you are going to spend 2,000, 3,000, you don't need a bag because you are carrying only 10 cedi notes or 20 cedi notes. You take some 200 notes. And if you are going to buy groundnuts, I'm sure you are not stupid enough to go with 200 Ghana cedis because the girl will not have change. Okay? No, so when things come, let's look at it logically. Go back. 40 years ago, 50 cedi note was the highest. Why was it the highest? Somebody assumed that $50 will be the highest you want for transaction. Now, the $50 now should be $250. So maybe the governor of the central bank will be thinking about a $250 note or $300 note. But I think they're a bit late. They should have done it maybe a year, 2 years. No, I applaud it. And all of us should support it. And when we leave certain businesses to experts, let's trust them to do what is right. The governor of the central bank is independent. He is not responsible through the Minister for Finance, through the President. The President appoints him, but he's allowed to do his work.
And so you have no problems at all with
No, it's like you are building. You get an engineer, surveyor, a bricklayer, and then you are talking. Or you are sitting behind a car, being driven by a driver. Instead of a minister reading your notes and your minutes to go to your board meeting, you want to be a backseat driver. No, let's allow the government. He knows what he's doing.
Right. Away from that, let's talk about the economy, which also is an area that you focus on quite strongly. So since this government came into power in 2016, we've seen some impressive macroeconomic figures. Inflation, we've seen inflation go down to single digits. The deficit has also come down. Economic growth has, improved significantly. Are you impressed so far?
Oh yeah, I mean from where they started from, significant successes have been chalked. But I think that macroeconomic stability is a necessary condition for robust growth, but it's not sufficient condition. We have to move ahead. Macroeconomic stability is not an end in itself. We need to create tensions between stability and growth. For example, some people seem to take pride in the idea that the cedi is stable vis-a-vis the dollar. So that's for some litmus test for economic success. It doesn't make sense. For the exporter, those who are exporting, if your inflation is about 8%, you expect your cedi to depreciate by about 10%. So there's a cushion for the exporter. So that the people who are exporting are happy to export and bring in the foreign exchange. And those who are importing feel the pinch. So that when Guta goes to the bank to try to borrow money to import goods, they feel the pinch because they are paying more cedis for it, not less. So, yes, macroeconomics, nobody really made a breakthrough through macroeconomic stability. You create tensions, growth. For example, if we're really growing robustly, some of the growth poles that start, they grow faster, about 10-15%, while there's about 1-2, so that I get an average about 7. Those that are growing faster, let's take about 10 years ago. The banking sector was growing phenomenally.
Right.
A lot of young, bright people were being attracted into the bank. Salaries were going up and so forth. So your best brains were being attracted there. That's what we need to happen. So
Huawei Y9S is available now in Ghana at 1,499 Ghana cedis, and you get a free Bluetooth